What's going on, people? It's your boy Tone, back with another video. Today we have inside the mind of Jeffrey Dahmer, serial killer's chilling jailhouse interview. Now I'm sure you guys already know or have already seen the Netflix special they have on him currently. I haven't seen it yet myself, but I thought it was a good idea to get to understand this whole situation by actually listening to the man himself before I watch the actual series. So the video is going to be by Inside Edition, and of course there's a description below that says, warning, this video contains graphic description of violence. 24 years ago, Jeffrey Dahmer was beaten to death in prison while serving 16 life sentences. In 1993, the man known as the Milwaukee Cannibal granted Inside Edition a jailhouse interview and was forthright about his crimes. During his reign of terror between 1978 and 1991, Dahmer killed 17 men and boys and kept some of their body parts in freezers inside his home. He was eventually arrested in 1991 when a victim escaped. So, let's begin.
I desensitized myself to it. I don't know, I went to great lengths.
He is pure evil, but you'd never know it by looking at him.
O'Reilly.
But when you hear him, that's another story.
Back in the day.
His killing field was Milwaukee, and he got away with murder for more than a decade. But how could any of this happen? For the first time ever, Nancy Glass is here inside the world of Jeffrey Dahmer.
But give a heads up, before the Netflix special and all this buzz came out about him, I haven't heard about him myself, so this is kind of like my introduction to him as well. So let's just see what's going on, you guys. Come on.
Bill, when I sat down opposite Jeffrey Dahmer for this interview, I wondered what he would tell me, how hard it would be to get him to discuss his horrific crimes. What I found was that he was very forthcoming. He volunteered details that may be difficult to hear. I began by asking what he wanted from the men he picked up.
I had these obsessive desires and thoughts wanting to control them, to, I don't know how to put it, possess them permanently.
And that's why you killed them.
Right.
Possess them permanently.
Right. Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me. And as my obsession grew, I was saving body parts such as skulls and skeletons.
Jeffrey Dahmer is recalling his monstrous past. Almost 2 years ago in this little apartment in
Already
Milwaukee,
starting off with the
police
craziness.
discovered the grisly remnants of one of the most horrible crime sprees in American history.
Skulls
Jeffrey
and
Dahmer,
skeletons.
an unassuming chocolate factory worker, would eventually confess that he had seduced, murdered, and dismembered 17 young men. He even ate some of his victims' body parts. He instantly became the center of worldwide media attention, a serial killer unmasked. There were protests and press conferences in Milwaukee as people tried to understand how this could have happened in their midst.
Right.
How did Jeffrey Dahmer get away with murder after murder for 13 years?
Right.
How did a boy born into a hard-working middle-class family turn into the worst kind of monster imaginable?
And the protest was mainly about people were saying that he was targeting his victims based on race, and that's where a lot of the protests was coming from. And how people were calling in, one person was calling in and was saying something was going on, and because of the area that they were in was like a low income area, the police really didn't care about it. The police didn't pay no mind, and so he continued this onslaught for years. Let's keep it going.
In this exclusive interview, we put those questions to Jeffrey Dahmer himself. We met with him at the maximum security prison where he is serving his sentence of 999 years. For the first time, he talks about his crimes and gives us a chilling look inside the mind of a serial killer.
It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. When you depersonalize another person and view them as just an object for pleasure instead of a living, breathing human being, it seems to make it easier to do things you shouldn't do.
The reason why Jeffrey Dahmer was able to get away with his crimes was because of just what you are seeing here. Jeffrey Dahmer is intelligent and articulate. That is what makes him so frightening. But if you listen carefully to his words throughout this interview, you realize it is a thin disguise.
You do sound, though, like the kind of person who could have said to himself, "This is wrong. I must stop."
I always knew that it was wrong, but after the first killing was not planned.
It seemed like even like right there, the real him was starting to break out. This act he's kind of putting on right here, and he had to hold it back and reserve himself. Like he was thinking back on his memories and fantasizing about those, and almost as if he was even in this interview having pleasure just from the memories of his victims, just based off that. Watch him right here.
But after the first killing was not planned. I was coming back from the shopping mall back in '78. I had fantasies about picking up a hitchhiker and taking him back to the house and having complete control and dominance over him.
The hitchhiker's name was Stephen Hicks. He was just 18. Jeffrey Dahmer took him to his parents' house. There he strangled him with a barbell. He dismembered the body and hid it in a drain pipe. It was Jeffrey Dahmer who gave those details to the police in his confession.
No one.
You gotta be a certain type of crazy to strangle somebody with a barbell and hide the body in a drain pipe. That sounds like some movie type joint going on right here, but this is what this guy was really doing to people. And so you got to ask yourself, what kind of mentality was he in? Was he even attached to reality of his surroundings, or he was just so far in his fantasies, he was just gone from reality, bro? Like, that's dark, man. Come on.
No one had a clue as to what was happening for over a decade.
During that time, Jeffrey Dahmer joined the Army and was sent to Germany. He was eventually discharged for a drinking problem and returned to Ohio. 9 years after Stephen Hicks' murder, the killing began again.
What happened to you in the 9 years in between that you were able to stop, that you were able to control yourself?
It just wasn't an opportunity to fully express what I wanted to do. There was just not the physical opportunity to do it.
So he wanted to.
And I started, when I moved to Milwaukee in '81, I started reading pornography, going to the bookstores. Eventually that led to frequenting the gay bars. And then one time I brought this young man back to the hotel room, the Ambassador Hotel. Was just planning on drugging him and spending the night with him. Had no intention of hurting him. When I woke up in the morning, he had a broken rib here, was heavily bruised. Apparently I had beaten him to death with my fists.
And you have no memory of it?
I have no memory of it. But that's what started the whole spree all over again.
So the guy basically blacks out, turns into this character that he doesn't even remember him doing these acts. Imagine the mindset, bro. Like he is gone. I'm not even gonna call him crazy because the word crazy is very dismissive and that avoids accountability. But I mean, this guy's mind is gone, man.
Dahmer says he snuck the corpse of his victim, Stephen Toomey, out of his hotel room in a suitcase. Then he took it to his grandmother's house, where he cut up the body and put it in plastic garbage bags.
When you killed these men, afterwards, were you repulsed? Were you upset?
No, at the time, it was almost addictive. It was almost a surge of energy. I wouldn't have to worry about any of their needs or anything. I just had complete control of the situation.
But Jeffrey Dahmer was out of control. The urge to kill had overpowered him. As police later learned, he wasn't satisfied with his victim's death. He wanted more.
Why did you photograph them?
It was my way of remembering their appearance, their physical beauty. I also wanted to keep if I couldn't keep them there with me whole, at least I felt that I could keep their skeletons. And I even went so far as planning on setting up an altar with the 10 different skulls and skeletons.
And what was the purpose of the altar going?
Hold on, can y'all picture that though? He just said he's gonna set up an altar with 10 different skulls and the remains of his victims. That is some satanic, dark stuff right there, bro.
As a sort of memorial, a point where I could, I don't know. It's so bizarre and strange. It's hard to describe. A place where I could collect my thoughts and feed my obsession.
When the bodies were still in your apartment, there was no time when you would see them and say, "This is grotesque. What have I done?"
What's going on?
There were times, but the compulsive obsession with doing what I was doing overpowered any feelings of revulsion.
This man with a quiet,
like an
almost shy
addiction.
demeanor became a master manipulator
Almost
who was
like-
able to
like
lure
drugs.
strangers he met at gay bars to his apartment. He was even able to con the police into returning a 14-year-old boy to him after neighbors called 911 upset
Returning?
that the child was in the street naked and bleeding. Dahmer convinced the police that he and the boy were simply having a lover's quarrel.
It's a intoxicated boyfriend of another boyfriend.
Well, how old was this child?
It wasn't a child, it was an adult.
After the police left, Jeffrey Dahmer murdered that boy, Conorak Synthesomphone. This man says he had a near-fatal encounter with Jeffrey Dahmer.
He wanted to take some picture of my back. He hit me with a rubber hammer on my neck.
He was lucky to escape because by then the killing had become almost routine.
Before you went out to pick up a man, was there any kind of ritual you went through?
I'd go to the nightclubs, drink, watch the striptease shows, and if I didn't meet anyone at the bars, I'd go to the bath clubs and meet someone there, offer them money, and we'd go back to the apartment, have a few drinks. I'd have the sleeping pill mixture already prepared. Person would drink it, fall asleep, and that's when they would be strangled.
Watching the movie Exorcist 3 was also part of his ritual. It put him in the mood for murder.
He already has the whole night planned out. He's done this several times. So he's planning out the whole night to the point where he even has the drink to put them to sleep already made before they even get there.
I felt so hopelessly evil and perverted that I actually derived a sort of pleasure from watching that tape.
Did you like feeling evil?
Pleasure.
No, I didn't, but I had tried to overcome the thoughts, and it worked for a while, but eventually I gave in.
While Jeffrey Dahmer may say things today that make it seem like he understands what went on in his mind, he does not.
He don't.
All he can do is tell you what happened, but he cannot stop whatever it is that drove him to kill in the first place.
Do you still feel those same urges? Do you still feel
You know
that
he does.
compulsion, that obsession?
I wish I could say that it just left completely, but no, there are times when I still do have the old compulsions.
Jeffrey Dahmer says as time went on, his mind became more and more warped, and yet he was clever enough to continue to elude police and lure young men to his apartment. We should warn you, the details are very graphic.
I started having these obsessive thoughts when I was about 15 and 16, and they got worse and worse.
What were your fantasies about?
They were sexual fantasies of control, power, complete dominance. They became reality.
Was there pleasure in that fantasy?
There was excitement, fear, pleasure, all mixed together.
Jeffrey Dahmer fulfilled his fantasies by murdering and dismembering 17 young men.
Man.
In time, his desires became more extreme, his deeds more grotesque. Listen to him talk about the most unnatural things in the most matter-of-fact of ways. That's when you realize that none of it has touched him.
I was branching out. That's when the cannibalism started, eating of the heart and the arm muscle. It was a way of making me feel that they were a part of me. At first it was just curiosity, and then it became compulsive. Then I tried to keep the person alive by inducing a zombie-like state. By injecting first dilute acid solution into their brain or hot water, and it never did completely work.
Could someone like you be stopped? Could you be helped?
No, I was dead set on going with this compulsion. It was the only thing that gave me any satisfaction.
He said that he began to eat the people's hearts and arm muscles just so that he can feel attached to them, like permanently, forever.
His evil impulses that he even took a victim's head with him to work at the Ambrosia chocolate factory.
I kept the mummified head and skull of one of the victims in a carrying case in my locker at work.
Were you almost flaunting it?
Yes, but that's how strong the
Almost
compulsion
as if
was. That's
he
how
wanted to get caught.
bizarre the desire was. I wanted to keep something of the person with me.
Jeffrey Dahmer exhibited some disturbing behavior early on. He began drinking heavily as a teenager, dropped out of college, was arrested for indecent exposure, disorderly conduct, and fondling a 13-year-old boy. Tragically, one of his murder victims would be that boy's brother.
Do you know what started it? Was there any kind of incident that you can remember?
To this day, I don't know what started it. And the person to blame is sitting right across from you. That's the only person. Not parents, not society, not pornography. I mean, those are just excuses.
His macabre 13-year crime spree finally ended when this man, Tracy Edwards, brought the police to the infamous apartment. Like the others, he had gone there with the promise of money.
He was listening to my heart because at a point he told me he was going to eat my heart at that point. I hit him and I ran.
What was the turning point for you that made you suddenly realize that you had done something terribly wrong, something you should be sorry for?
It was the night of the arrest. I have no memory of what happened during the 6 hours before the last victim ran out of the apartment. I heard a knock on the door, and the police were there with the last victim. They asked me where the key was to the handcuffs. My mind was in a haze. I sort of pointed to the bedroom, and that's where they found the pictures. And they yelled, "Cuff him." And I was handcuffed. And it was just the realization that there was no point in trying to hide my actions anymore. The best route was to help the police identify all the victims and just make a complete confession.
When it was revealed that most of the victims were black or homosexual, people in Milwaukee were incensed. Many felt that was why he went after them and why the police didn't seem to care when their families reported them missing.
And I know there is like a clip going around online of basically calling into the police to report him. Literally, she hears him taking somebody out, taking one of his victims out, and she calls in to report, and the police didn't even take the call seriously. They didn't even send nobody out there. So that's the other side of that coin, where people are saying, hey, we were reporting this guy for a long time, but y'all didn't take it serious because of the location that we're at. And that's where the whole the race issue comes into play.
Were they racially motivated?
It was not racially motivated. It was not sexual preference. It was just to find an obsession with the best-looking young man I could find.
While you just heard him say that his sexual preference had nothing to do with the killings, he has not come to terms with his homosexuality.
Never understood it. There was no use trying to fight it because I couldn't rid myself of it. It was too powerful and persistent.
Do you dislike it?
Yes, it's caused a lot of problems.
All right, you guys, we're going to wrap it up there. Of course, the next step here is to actually watch the series to understand what happened in more detail. I know there's a lot of reports out and a lot of information out there detailing his acts, and we're just glad to see him finally get arrested, even though it was a little bit behind. To walk around and to be able to kill 17 people, and the only way you got caught is because one person escaped. That's the only reason they found out. That's kind of ridiculous, you know what I mean? So we're definitely glad this guy got locked up. Whatever happened to him in jail, It is what it is. He's got some satanic, just deep rooted blind. I remember he was saying at one point he would just black out, and when he woke up, the person that he was dealing with, he already broke their rib. I mean, just insane mindset to have. So we're gonna wrap this video up and get up out of here, guys. As always, you guys be safe out there and hold it down, man. Peace.
If I should die at a young age, I thank the Lord for giving me a break. If I should die at a young age, I thank the Lord for giving me a break. Cause I'll probably live forever, ever, probably live forever, ever, probably live forever, ever, I'll probably live forever, ever.